My daughter and I secretly went to my husband's swimming club without informing him in advance, but instead of seeing his surprised, joyful face, my eyes blurred when I saw my husband sitting on the edge of the pool, using his body to tightly hold a blonde woman, their lips touching with such professional precision that my heart stopped beating. I was about to scream right then and there, but I couldn't, not with my daughter present. I pulled her hand and turned her away before she could see that awful scene and said, "Let's go, sweetie. Your dad is practicing breathing." But I already had a different plan, one that would make them tremble. My name is Kimberly Roberts, 38 years old, regional sales director for BMW Midwest, living in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. And this morning, when the Delta plane's wheels gently touched the runway at Detroit Metropolitan, I still thought I was simply bringing home two small gifts and a sweet surprise for my family. A dark green box containing a Rolex Submariner for Raymond, my husband, and a mini American Girl doll purse for Lisa, our 9-year-old daughter. I came home 2 days earlier than planned, without notice, because I wanted to see the way Lisa would scream "Mom" and leap into my arms, and how Raymond would smile, slightly embarrassed, and ask in his warm, familiar voice, "Why didn't you tell me?" I would have picked you up, and I'd reply, "Because I wanted to see you surprised." Detroit's light tilted onto the airplane wing, my face reflecting in the oval window like a warped mirror, and in that fluttering moment of the heart, I couldn't have imagined that just a few hours later, everything I believed to be certain would crack like the surface of a tempered glass struck precisely at its center. I pulled my carry-on, moved through the crowd at Gate A, and texted Lisa, "Honey, Mommy's on the way home." She replied instantly with a string of heart emojis, and then typed, "Daddy went to swimming class, won't be back till 10 like the other days." My hand froze on the suitcase handle. Swimming. I heard Eleanor's voice, Raymond's mother, echo from a long past summer. "He's scared of water, dear." Nearly drowned in Lake St. Clair when he was 5. Back when we just got married, I used to tease, "I'll teach you to swim." And he'd laugh, shake his head, and wave it off as if trying to gather all his fear into a single awkward gesture. For the past 3 months, I'd been rotating through Boston, Michigan, Cleveland endlessly, nights in hotels thick with the sterile scent of central air. I trusted Raymond's messages. "I'm hitting the gym to lose the office belly," evening classes at Detroit Athletic Club near the office, and I believed it more each time I looked at the framed photo on the shelf. Lisa wrapping her arms around her dad's neck at Cranbrook Park, me standing behind them, sunlight pouring like honey. But her message sent a cold line running from the back of my neck down to my shoulder blade. Why swimming? Why always on the days I was away? I opened Uber and booked a ride to Bloomfield Hills. The Rolex box in my handbag nudged gently against my hip, as if whispering, "Don't be so suspicious." And I whispered back, "Just get home first." As the car exited I-94, I looked out the window, Detroit's city lights receding like a rewinding film. A 2-hour flight, and now only 20 miles to go. I imagined Lisa running to the door, yelling, "Mom!" and throwing herself at me, her hands still sticky with the chocolate cookies Eleanor brought over yesterday. And she did just that. When I opened the door, Lisa's tiny rubber sandals slapped across the hardwood floor. She rushed over, beaming, "Daddy's at swimming class, won't be home till late." "You're early." I hugged her, her hair smelling like green apples. "Yes, I came home 2 days early. Let's go out for dinner, a really nice one." One thought filled my head. If Raymond was really at the Detroit Athletic Club like he said, why not take Lisa there, have dinner, and surprise him? A small, sweet plan, enough to dissolve that prickly feeling tapping at my chest. I changed jackets, tied up my hair, and drove the freshly washed BMW A7 out of the garage. Maple Road was quiet, autumn leaves blazing gold on either side. I rolled down the window, Detroit's cold wind weaving through my hair, carrying the scent of wood smoke and coffee from the corner cafe. Driving into downtown, golden lights along Woodward Avenue lit up like beads on a silk shawl. I smiled, imagining Raymond's surprise at seeing us in the lobby, Lisa holding up her new purse, and me handing him the gift box he'd always wanted. Minutes later, we stood in the lobby of the Detroit Athletic Club. Autumn wind chilled just enough for me to pull my coat tighter. Inside was the scent of polished wood, interlaced with the expensive perfume of passing women, the soft tapping of heels on marble. I held Lisa's hand and whispered, "Daddy's swimming. Let's surprise him." She nodded, smiling, her American Girl purse slung across her body like a little medal. We walked down the gleaming tile hallway toward the indoor pool. Through a giant window like a movie screen, ceiling lights scattered into countless glints on the blue water. I smiled, took a breath. Then, as if a curtain had dropped, I saw Raymond. He was sitting on the pool's edge, one hand behind the back of a blonde woman in a sporty blue swimsuit. She stood between his legs, pressed against him, head thrown back, laughing, and he leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a clumsy touch of a man afraid of water seeking balance. It was a kiss well acquainted with itself, soft and sure, like a ritual. I didn't hear Lisa because everything in the Diac disappeared at that moment, except their lips, his hand, her black swim watch reflecting ceiling light like an exclamation mark. Madeline. I etched the name into memory. I had seen that face, that name once in Raymond's work email, when he mentioned a VIP client. Lisa tugged my sleeve, eyes drawn to the giant Christmas tree in the side hall, not seeing the scene beyond the glass. I placed a hand on her back and gently steered her away. "Let's go, honey. Daddy's busy." The words busy slipped from my mouth like a blade that refused to pierce. I pulled out my iPhone, hand steady as it framed the shot through glass. My heartbeat was not as fast as I expected, but slow. So slow each beat sounded like a hammer striking wood, sealing a door inside me, one thud at a time. I filmed long enough not to need a second look, close enough to read lips saying, "Just a little more," without hearing the sound. Then I put the phone away, bent down, and whispered to Lisa, "Daddy will swim for a while. Let's go home." She nodded, lifted her new purse in front of the mirror, spun once. I smiled, my facial muscles numb from holding back every small twitch. I ordered an Uber from the lobby, didn't drive. My mind whispered, "Don't turn yourself into the 10 p.m. traffic report over a reckless swerve." In the car, I opened the Empower app and spoke to Ava, my virtual finance assistant, in a flat tone. "Ava, show me a family expense overview for the past 3 months." The screen lit up, graphs dancing. $3,500 transferred monthly to a name I'd never seen, Meridian Property Solutions, LLC. $48,000 withdrawn from the 401k in 4 neat installments, scattered purchases in Midtown at a boutique furniture store I'd never visited. "Classify all transfers to Meridian by date, note origin, identify owner," I said. Ava returned, "Owner, Raymond Roberts." The entire car darkened. I heard Lisa breathing evenly beside me, her head resting on my shoulder, arms still hugging the new purse. "Ava," I continued, throat dry, "open fixed assets list, compare home and lakeside cabin records." I typed Zillow, swiped to another tab, opened the Michigan Property Records portal, entered the Lakeview cabin address. The screen jumped to the Transactions section, and there, in pale red, Pending transfer. I clicked. Seller, Kimberly Roberts. Buyer, Meridian Property Solutions, LLC. Amount, $300,000. I looked at the signature, a clumsy left-handed version impersonating my right. I heard my own voice in my head, "Stay calm. Only calmness lets you survive." I downloaded the PDF, saved it in a folder named June Lake, a name I invented on the spot, so I wouldn't have to call it Betrayal. "Mom, are we home yet?" Lisa nuzzled into my coat. "Almost, sweetheart." I stroked her hair, eyes fixed on the word, pending. I called the Oakland County Register of Deeds office, left an urgent message with address, file number, and the phrase "suspected fraudulent conveyance. Please place a temporary hold." The operator repeated the case number, calm as if this were a minor clerical error in some assembly line. But for me, it was the only rope across a chasm. As the car turned into our tree-lined street, I suddenly remembered a distant afternoon. Lake St. Clair, still as a silver dish, Raymond kneeling with a simple silver ring in hand, saying, "I promise you'll never have to stand alone." The wind blowing from the lake, carrying the damp metallic scent of water and fresh grass. I had believed him, believed so thoroughly that the belief itself felt like a tangible object with weight, one I could place on a shelf and admire every night. I opened the door, turned on the kitchen light, placed the Rolex box on the table like an unspoken question. Lisa ran off to find Peanut, our rescue dog, to show off her new purse. I stood at the kitchen counter, took off my coat, and in those few seconds, I heard a sound as thin as glass cracking in hot water. It was the sound of trust heating too quickly under the chill of a cold truth. I opened my laptop, dragged all downloaded files into a new folder named Lakeview Hold, drafted an email to the only family lawyer I trusted from James's referral, Vera Murphy, but paused, because before sending, I needed one last puzzle piece. Emily, the young customer service rep at the insurance firm where Raymond worked, who had visited our home a few times during staff parties. I remembered her eyes, quick, but always slightly hesitant when looking at Raymond, like she wanted to say something but didn't dare. I opened messages, typed, "Emily, do you know a client named Madeline? Has anyone ever scheduled appointments without submitting contracts?" The soft yellow kitchen light fell on my hand as I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. The phone buzzed. "She's VIP, but no contract. I've seen her name on our internal schedule, but no policy attached." I replied with just one word, "Thanks." Then reopened the pool video. I didn't want to hurt myself, but I needed to see one more second to ensure that tomorrow morning, when I said "I know," I'd say it in the voice of someone who had just stepped out of a dream and remembered every detail, not someone still dreaming, trying to prove it. Outside the window, the silent rooftops of Bloomfield Hills stood like a frozen set, and I saw myself, a woman just landed, luggage tag still dangling from her suitcase, already having to put away the box of his dreams and make a phone call she never wanted to make. "Mom," I said when Eleanor answered, "I'm back." She paused, then quietly said, "Kimberly, Raymond. Lately, he said he's been taking swim classes." I closed my eyes, smiled without joy. "I know." I hung up before she could ask more, because I didn't want anyone to witness the moment I drew a deep breath, touched the cold edge of the wooden counter, and made a decision I knew would shift the course of my life. Less than an hour from now, I would look Raymond in the eyes, place the Rolex box between us, and say that I had learned how to swim, even if he still feared the water. I sat on the living room sofa, lights off, lit only by the dim glow of the microwave clock and the faint yellow porch light outside. The house was silent. Each tick of the wall clock felt like a knock against the weight of waiting. Exactly at 10 p.m., the soft click of the lock sounded. Raymond walked in, jacket slung over his shoulder, pool water still clinging to his hair and collar. He whistled softly, fumbling for the switch, and then flipped on the lights. The room flooded with brightness. He froze. In that moment, I saw his eyes widen, pupils dilate like the light had burned them. He jerked back a step, nearly dropping his keys when he saw me sitting there, motionless on the sofa, hands clasped, my face cold and still as stone. "Kimberly," his voice cracked softly, hesitant. What are you doing here?" I thought. "You thought I was still in Boston?" I cut in, my voice so calm it surprised even me. "I came back 2 days early." And what a coincidence, just in time to catch a swim lesson. He froze mid-smile, lips parted but unable to form words. He tried to keep composure, but I saw his shoulders tense, that defensive twitch of someone who knows they've been seen doing the inexplicable. "What are you talking about?" he asked, voice trembling faintly. I stood up. The ceiling light poured down, catching the steel glint in my eyes. Slowly, I retrieved the Rolex box from the cabinet and placed it on the table between us. Deep green, gold logo gleaming. A gift for a man I no longer recognized. "I was going to give you this tonight," I said slowly, to celebrate 5 years since we bought the cabin by the lake. But then I found out you forged my signature to transfer that house to your LLC. He flinched slightly, forcing a steady tone. Are you sure? Maybe there's a mix-up with the paperwork. You're taking swim lessons with a 28-year-old private coach and forging my signature to transfer the lake house to your LLC? I said, voice low and even, as though reading each line of an indictment. He stammered, voice shaking. You misunderstood. It was just a joke. I meant, I'm not mistaken, Raymond. I have video. The air thickened into stillness. In that moment, I saw him swallow hard, his gaze fixed on the floor like he wanted to crawl into his own shadow. Lisa was asleep upstairs, and only the soft hum of the heater broke the silence. Raymond stepped back, then tried to regain composure. I don't know what's happened to you. I'm going to step out for a bit. We can talk when you've calmed down. Don't act like I've lost control, I said quietly. Exactly who's losing control, Raymond? He looked at me, eyes disoriented, then turned away. He silently stuffed a few things into a brown leather duffel, the one I bought him at the Chicago Fair last year. I noticed his hands shaking, not from fear of me, but of what he'd just exposed. I'll stay at a hotel for a few days, he said, trying to keep his voice calm, but it caught in his throat. So we both have time to think. I said nothing, just watched him, eyes following the zipper closing the bag. Neat, final. The door slammed shut behind him, sharp, cold, hollow. The house fell silent. I returned to the dining table, opened the Rolex box, gazed at the watch gleaming under the light. The minute hand crept forward. Exactly 10:17 p.m. I let out a soft, cold laugh. You said you wanted to learn how to swim, Raymond. Maybe you should start by learning not to drown in your own lies. I closed the box, returned it to the cabinet, then opened my laptop. The screen lit up, reflecting my face. Not the woman returning from a business trip, but one preparing for war. In the search bar, my fingers paused over a familiar name. Vera Murphy, an Irish-American attorney specializing in divorces with complex financial disputes. I knew of her through James, an old college friend and CPA who once helped me audit taxes when Raymond opened a secondary account. James had said, if anyone can beat a cheat, it's Vera. She won a $2.7 million case once. I remember I had smiled lightly. I don't need to win, James. I just need fairness. I pressed my lips together, opened my email, and typed the first lines. I need an urgent appointment. And I have evidence. In the dark, the screen blinked. Message sent. I leaned back, listening to my own breathing mingling with the warmth from the fireplace. Outside, the autumn wind howled through the trees. And in that moment, I knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, Detroit lay beneath a thin veil of mist, like parchment. I brewed coffee, watching the steam rise from the white ceramic mug Lisa had once gifted me for Mother's Day. The words, "World's Best Mom," now half faded from too many washes. The coffee was bitter, but not enough to drown the metallic taste in my throat. Raymond hadn't returned. His message was just a few empty words. I need some time. I didn't reply. I simply stared at the text, then deleted it. At 9:15 a.m., I parked outside a red brick building in downtown Birmingham. Vera's office was on the third floor, a modern space with clear glass walls, walnut desks, and little cactus pots. Vera Murphy, around 42, wine-red hair, thin silver-rimmed glasses, stood by the window when I walked in. Her voice was low, warm, slightly husky, the tone of someone who's fought many battles. Kimberly Roberts? I read your email last night, she said, shaking my hand firmly. I'm guessing this is serious. I nodded, placing a USB drive on her desk containing all the videos, document scans, and PDFs. I need you to review this, and I want to halt the lake house transfer immediately. Vera sat down, plugged in the USB, her eyes skimming through the files at a pace that made me both admire and fear her. She raised an eyebrow at the pending transfer entry on the Michigan Property Records site. Forged signature, privately formed LLC, retirement account withdrawal, all within the same time frame, she said, looking up at me. Do you have video evidence of the affair? I do. I pushed my phone toward her. Vera watched a short clip, then stopped. She removed her glasses and placed them on the desk. Good. You've come to the right person. We can file for divorce citing fraudulent conveyance. I'll prepare a court motion to freeze all transactions involving this LLC. Then we'll pursue restoration of your ownership of the lake house, and if necessary, press charges for signature forgery. I sat silently, staring at the stack of documents before me. Physical proof of everything I hadn't wanted to believe. Vera tilted her head, her voice softening. Kimberly, you're very composed. I see that. But to get through this, you need to be ready for one thing. He will try to paint you as crazy. That's what people do when they're afraid of the truth. I pressed my lips together. I'm not crazy, Vera. I'm just tired of holding it together for too long. Vera gave a faint smile and handed me a cup of hot tea she had just brewed. Then let me handle the legal part. You handle the calm. Deal? I nodded. Sunlight from the window fell across the desk, reflecting the faces of two women, one freshly betrayed, the other seasoned in turning betrayal into strategy. And in that light, I saw something new. A beginning, not an end. That afternoon, I returned home, autumn sunlight streaming through the maple trees outside, casting a strangely warm golden hue across the living room wall. Lisa was doing her homework while I sat in the study, opened my laptop, and saw a new notification. One attachment from Emily Sanders. Emily, the young assistant who once worked under Raymond in customer support, had kept her word. I opened the email. The first line read, Kimberly, I'm sending you the contract copy and internal emails between Raymond and the sales team. Please don't tell anyone it came from me. I'm scared of being found out. I inhaled deeply. The attachment contained a thread of emails between Raymond and a group of staff. He had unilaterally altered the terms of insurance contracts, added fake service upgrades, and collected direct commissions from clients. The total amounted to nearly $88,000, distributed across secondary accounts, including Meridian Property Solutions, LLC. I sat still for several minutes, listening to the wind outside the window. Each email, each line, each figure was a precise cut. The man who once held my hand and promised, I'll never let you stand alone, was now living off the money of his clients, of mine, and of his own daughter. I called Vera via Zoom. She studied the documents on screen, nodded, her tone calm. This is clear evidence of insurance fraud. But we won't send it directly from my office. It'll come from you. Anonymous report. I opened the official website of the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, DIFS, Michigan's financial oversight agency. Vera guided me through each field. Type of violation, misrepresentation in policy, description, altered contracts for personal gain. When I reached the anonymous reporter section, I paused, staring at those words for a long time. Part of me wanted to sign my real name, to stop being afraid. But Vera spoke gently. Justice sometimes requires temporary silence. Let them speak first. I nodded, hit submit. The screen displayed a green message. Your report has been submitted successfully. Case reference, DIFS-FRA-27418. A soft sound pinged, the confirmation. But to me, it sounded like the latch clicking shut on an old chapter. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The sun had set, the room bathed in red dusk. Lisa called from the next room. Mom, what are we having for dinner? I smiled faintly, my voice oddly steady. Pizza, sweetheart. Tonight I want something simple. I shut the laptop, stood up, and walked toward the kitchen. Inside, the soft orange light of the oven glinted off my hands, and I realized even the simplest acts, like placing a pizza on a tray, could be gestures of freedom. Somewhere across the city, Raymond was likely still sitting in his hotel room, unaware that the first wave had already begun. And me, I was, for the first time, beginning to take control of my own story. 3 days later, the wave I had set in motion began to spread. On Monday morning, as Raymond stepped into the downtown Detroit insurance office, the receptionist called out, "Someone's here for you, court papers." He turned around, barely had time to react before the process server, dressed in a gray suit, voice firm, placed a manila envelope on the desk. "Raymond Roberts?" "Yes, that's me." "You've been served with a divorce summons from the Oakland County Court. Please sign here to confirm receipt." The lobby fell utterly silent. Colleagues passing by glanced over, pretending to be busy with phone calls or documents. Raymond signed, his hand trembling. He tore open the envelope, reading the first line. Petitioner, Kimberly Roberts. Below was a list of civil offenses: marital asset fraud, signature forgery, concealment of income, and a court-issued order, dated that very morning, to freeze all accounts under Meridian Property Solutions, LLC. That afternoon, my phone rang repeatedly. I let it go to the fourth ring before answering. Raymond's voice was shaky. "Kimberly, I just made a mistake. I never meant to hurt you." I stood by the window, watching tree shadows stretch across the walkway. The late daylight filtered through the blinds, cutting my face in two, half lit, half in shadow. It wasn't a mistake, Raymond. It was calculated silence on the other end. I heard him breathing, short, panicked, like someone grasping at something already lost. "I need your forgiveness," he said. "I've lost everything, my job, my reputation, even my daughter." I cut in, my voice calm as a still lake. "What you lost wasn't because of me. I just brought light to what you tried to hide a few seconds past." Then his voice dropped, barely a whisper. "What do you want, Kimberly?" I glanced at the watch on my wrist. Not the Rolex, just my old Seiko, still ticking steadily since 2015, the year we bought the lake cabin. "Justice," I said. "Just justice." I hung up, then stood there for a few minutes, letting the silence fill the room. On the table sat a cooled cup of tea and the file Vera had returned that morning. Divorce filing, case 3247B. In the corner was a handwritten note from Vera. "Keep calm, we are ahead." I smiled faintly. Out on the porch, Lisa was drawing with sidewalk chalk. She sketched a small house with a red roof and a woman standing by the door, holding the leash of a tiny dog. I sat beside her without a word, just watching that drawing, and I knew everything was moving in the right direction. That night, after Lisa had gone to bed, I cleared the dining table, stacked Vera's files neatly, and was about to turn off the light when the phone rang. The screen read, "Eleanor." I hesitated a few seconds before picking up. Her voice was hoarse, trembling, laced with sighs. "Kimberly? Are you all right?" I leaned against the kitchen counter, looking out the window where the porch light cast a glow on the glass. "I'm okay, Mom. Everything's being handled." On the other end, she was silent for a while, then softly said, 3 months ago, Raymond asked me to put the lake house in my name. He said it was to avoid property taxes. But when I looked at the papers, something felt wrong. It had your signature, but the handwriting was strange, like it was copied. I refused, Kimberly. I knew I shouldn't sign. But I didn't tell you. I was afraid it would ruin your marriage. Her voice cracked, like someone who had carried guilt too long. "I should have told you sooner." "I'm sorry." I gently tightened my grip on the phone, listening to the wind slipping through the window crack. A small sound, but enough to stretch the moment. "I understand, Mom," I said softly, trying to keep my voice gentle. But silence is part of the hurt, too. On the other side, just a deep exhale. "Kimberly, I know you're a good person. I just want you and Lisa to be at peace." "We will be, Mom," I replied, glancing toward the stairs, where the nightlight from Lisa's room spilled a thin but steady stream of light. "Thank you for telling me." After the call ended, I placed the phone on the table, a strange mix of sorrow and serenity rising in my chest. Eleanor's apology had come late, but it was a small crack in the wall of silence, and sometimes that's all it takes for light to get through. I turned off the lights, climbed the stairs, and knew I had taken one more step through the dark. Lisa's door was slightly ajar, a soft orange nightlight spilling across her star-shaped rug. She was sitting quietly, piecing together Legos, her face tilted, dark brown hair falling gently across her cheek. When I walked in, she looked up, her eyes wide and clear like an autumn lake. "Mom, is Dad still at the hotel?" Her voice was small but steady. I sat down beside her, gathering a few stray Lego bricks from the floor. "Yes, he'll be there a bit longer." I paused, inhaled deeply, then spoke slowly, carefully. "Lisa, I need to tell you something. Dad and I are getting divorced, but the most important thing you must remember is, I'm still here. I'll always be here." She sat still, her tiny fingers turning a red Lego piece. After a while, she looked up, her eyes misty. "Will Dad ever come back, Mom?" I brushed her hair gently, feeling the weight of her head rest against my shoulder. "Dad can still visit you, still love you. But from now on, it'll be just you and me living here. I promise you'll never feel alone." Lisa stayed quiet, then suddenly hugged me tightly, her small arms wrapped around my neck, whispering into my ear, "You're my superhero, Mom." My chest tightened. I smiled faintly, tears falling onto her shoulder. "I'm not a superhero, Lisa. I'm scared too. I'm sad. But I'll be strong, because you're here with me." She nodded, still clinging to me. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, leaves rustling like a lullaby. I looked toward her little desk, where she'd taped a photo of the two of us at Cranbrook Park, beneath which she'd scribbled in pink marker, "Home is where Mom is." I kissed the top of her head, soft and warm, like touching a promise. "Sleep now, Lisa. Tomorrow we'll have breakfast at your favorite cafe, okay?" "Okay," she whispered, still holding on. As Lisa drifted to sleep, I remained beside her, listening to her gentle breathing, the most peaceful sound I'd ever known. And in that moment, I realized every battle in this life begins and ends with one thing: protecting the ones we love. 3 weeks later, the real battle began. On Monday morning, the glass building of Midwest Guardian Insurance, where Raymond worked, glittered under the early winter sun. I walked in with my attorney, Vera Murphy. Her heels echoed steadily against the marble floor, firm and composed, like a drumbeat before a verdict. We were guided to the 14th floor conference room, where the company's board awaited. Inside, a long walnut table, the air thick with coffee and fresh paper. Raymond was already seated at the head, gray shirt, crooked tie, dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me enter, he froze, lips trembling as if to speak, then said nothing. I placed 3 thick binders on the table, each labeled neatly: video, DAC pool footage, property fraud, Lakeview Cabin, 401k withdrawal statement. Vera spoke first, voice clear, steady, and cold. "These documents prove Mr. Raymond Roberts violated company ethics, forged his wife's signature to transfer marital assets, and withdrew from his retirement fund to finance fraudulent activity." The room was silent. I saw the HR manager adjust her glasses while the CFO flipped through the statements. Every pause over a figure felt like another stone dropped into water. Vera inserted a USB, and the screen lit up. Raymond in the pool, arms around Madeline, a kiss illuminated by DC's overhead lights. No sound was needed. The room froze. I saw Raymond's throat twitch, his face flush red in the silence. Vera continued, "Personal behavior can be overlooked, but financial fraud, especially involving retirement accounts and insurance contracts, is a federal offense. All documents will be handed to the FBI for investigation into wire fraud." Raymond stood suddenly. "You can't do this. This is personal. It has nothing to do with the company." Vera remained composed, not even looking at him. "Wrong, Mr. Roberts. You used company accounts to move funds and forged internal client contracts. All verified on the server this morning. The HR director, a stern middle-aged woman, closed the file and stated bluntly, Raymond Roberts, you are terminated immediately for ethical violations, financial fraud, and insurance deception. All system access is revoked effective. Now Raymond turned to me, eyes pleading. Kimberly, don't do this. I'll lose everything, I replied, with a raspy but calm voice. You already did, Raymond. You just didn't realize it. 2 security guards appeared at the door. Raymond removed his badge, placed it on the table, and walked out between the 2 men in black suits. The door shut behind him, sealing the silence. Vera packed the files, slid the 3 binders into her case. That's the first step. Now let the FBI do theirs. I nodded, glancing out the massive window, where the gray Detroit sky stretched endlessly, rows of cars lining the highway like infinite wires. Vera added softly, as a reminder, Kimberly, justice doesn't need noise. It just needs to be certain. I pressed my lips together, looked at my hands, still trembling slightly, but steadier than before. As we exited the building, the Detroit wind blew hard, pushing my hair back, and for a brief moment, I felt light. Not because he was fired, but because for the first time, the truth no longer belonged to the liar. Just 3 days after that meeting, Detroit started buzzing, not from news outlets, but from social media. On Instagram, the account of Madeline Hartman, the 28-year-old swim coach with nearly 170,000 followers, suddenly became the center of attention. Old photos of her by the DAC pool, captions like, morning swim, clear mind, were now flooded with angry comments. An older American woman, maybe my mother's age, wrote, You swim with someone's husband, you drown in truth. That post alone got over 12,000 shares in one day. Madeline tried to delete photos, disable comments, but the internet doesn't believe in clean slates. Women's forums, from Facebook to Reddit, reposted the video of her in the DAC pool. Clear footage, bright lights, the unmistakable embrace, the undeniable kiss. That evening, I said nothing. I just sat by the window, chamomile tea cooling in my hands, scrolling through headlines. Vera messaged, Let the public do its part. Sometimes justice comes with its own hashtag. A week later, the landlord of Madeline's Midtown Detroit apartment issued a termination notice. Reason: funds used for rent originated from an LLC under criminal investigation. Madeline didn't respond. She quietly packed up, deleted all posts, shut down her Instagram, and left Detroit for her hometown, Gulfport, Mississippi. A neighbor told a local reporter, she left at dawn, just 2 suitcases and a gray cat. Meanwhile, Raymond's embezzlement and wire fraud case was transferred from Detroit PD to the FBI's Michigan field office. The investigation took nearly 3 months, reviewing LLC accounts, bank statements, and altered insurance contracts. On the day of trial, Raymond stood in court wearing an old suit, his face gaunt. His defense attorney pleaded for leniency due to a momentary lapse in judgment, but the prosecution only needed 2 pieces of evidence: the forged Lakeview cabin contract and the altered insurance emails. The judge ruled 4 years probation, repayment of $88,000 to the company, forfeiture of all LLC assets, and revocation of his insurance license. Raymond bowed his head, his voice barely audible. I understand. I wasn't in court that day. I stayed home, baking apple pie with Lisa. When Vera texted the verdict, I stared at the screen a long while, then replied, Thank you. Let Lakeview rest now. That afternoon, wind blew in from Lake St. Clair, carrying the scent of cold water and the cry of seagulls. I opened the window, took a deep breath. There was no feeling of victory, only a stillness as deep as water after a storm, the kind of stillness that costs more than it gives. Lisa came in, hands dusted with flour, holding a freshly baked pie. Mom, can I write your name on the crust? I nodded, smiling. Of course, sweetheart. Can you add the word freedom, too? She giggled, pressing a toothpick into the sugar crust. carving out each messy but clear letter: freedom. In the end, freedom didn't come with courtroom applause. It came in the scent of apple pie and the laughter of a child. And yet, when winter sunlight streamed through the window the next morning, I felt an unfamiliar void. No more arguments, no more lawyer emails, no more midnight texts from Royce. Only silence. And in that silence, sometimes I heard my own voice again. Tired, but alive. One Thursday afternoon, I drove nearly an hour to the Ann Arbor Community Center. Every Thursday, a group of women met there, the Divorced Women Support Group. No billboards, no speakers. Just a beige room, folding chairs in a circle, and faces that wore the same tired hope I did. We shared names. There was a silver-haired woman named Marjorie, divorced after 28 years. A young woman named Hannah, who left an abusive marriage 6 months ago. They spoke of not knowing who you are anymore, of relearning how to pay bills, how to sleep alone. One woman across from me said, her voice shaking, "I lost 20 years in silence, 20 years afraid to speak, fearing I'd be left behind." The room quieted. I saw myself in every sentence, in eyes that hid tears, in hands gripping courage. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and said, "I've been there too." Not 20 years, but long enough to forget the sound of my own voice. But not anymore. My voice didn't shake. It didn't break. It was simply true. A woman nodded and smiled, not in judgment, just solidarity. The facilitator, a middle-aged woman in a purple sweater, added, "Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It just means you choose to keep walking, even when it still hurts." After the session, we stayed, trading book lists, podcasts, and favorite cafes. Someone suggested, "Who wants to go to the Carytown Farmers Market next week?" I smiled, raised my hand. "I'll bring baked apples." Driving home, I-94 glowed with sunset. Bare trees lined the road like fine strokes on a canvas. I turned on the radio. Brandi Carlile's "The Story" came on, her voice raspy, rough, honest. I laughed softly to myself. In that moment, I realized I was no longer the woman who'd been betrayed. I was someone learning how to tell her story. At the turn into Bloomfield Hills, the wind slipped through the window, carrying the scent of coming snow. I whispered aloud, as if to myself, "Pain isn't the enemy. Pain proves we're still alive." And I felt truly light, for the winter inside me was slowly melting, making space for something else, the season of healing. 3 months later, I officially closed all legal proceedings. The old house in Bloomfield Hills, once filled with memories woven between love and lies, was sold to a young couple. I remember that morning, signing the papers, my hand steady for the first time. Vera stood beside me and smiled. Sometimes freedom begins with a signature, not to marry, but to leave. I simply replied, "I know." I used the remaining money to buy a small house in Ann Arbor, just 10 minutes from downtown. 2 bedrooms, a white-painted wooden porch, a backyard blooming with wild daisies. Not luxurious, but peaceful. Peaceful like a breath I had forgotten how to take. On the ground floor, I set up a desk by the window, with a small sign, "Second Act Financial Recovery, Divorce Finance Consulting," a consulting service for women post-divorce. The idea came during a support group meeting in Ann Arbor, when I realized how many women didn't know what to do with joint accounts, insurance, or split retirement funds. I wanted to help them avoid what I went through. Lisa loved the new home. She said the porch was the perfect place to draw in the afternoons, and the living room felt warm like Mom's apple pie. That made me laugh. Maybe it was true, because the scent of apple pie seemed to linger in the house, especially when Eleanor came to visit. She often arrived on weekends, carrying a brown paper bag full of toys and baked treats. When I opened the door, she stood there, tired face, but kind eyes. Lisa ran to hug her. "Grandma, can I take the cookies to my room?" "Of course, sweetheart," she laughed. After Lisa went upstairs, I poured tea for her. We sat at the kitchen table, sunlight cutting through the window, steaming from 2 teacups. Eleanor spoke softly, her voice low and trembling. Kimberly, I didn't know if I should come, but Lisa is still my granddaughter. I don't want you to think I picked a side. I set my cup down gently. You don't have to pick a side, Mom. She looked up, eyes moist. Family doesn't end with a paper. It just changes shape, I nodded quietly. Outside, Lisa's laughter echoed as Peanut chased a fluttering scarf through the yard. The scent of apple pie filled the house, warm and sweet, the kind of smell that, despite all changes, still softened my heart. Eleanor gently held my hand. You've done well, Kimberly. Maybe this is the life you were meant to live. I smiled, nodded, and looked out the garden. No, Mom. This is the life I rebuilt myself. One Saturday afternoon, the March breeze was soft, and sunlight poured gold over the streets of Ann Arbor. I parked outside the Trader Joe's on State Street, a small store always filled with the scent of baked bread and soft country music. I slowly pushed my cart down each aisle, picking up a loaf of whole-grain bread, a bag of Colombian organic coffee, a few red apples, and the almond milk Lisa liked. Everything felt so ordinary, it was almost peaceful. At checkout, the young cashier smiled brightly. Beautiful day, Ms. Roberts. I nodded, answering softly. It is. A truly beautiful day. And I realized it was the first time in years I said that and actually meant it. Driving home, I tuned into country radio 99.5 WYCD. Miranda Lambert's voice rose with The House That Built Me. The acoustic guitar strummed gently, filling the small car. In the rearview mirror, my face reflected between light and shadow. No longer the woman afraid of nights alone. Just me. Calm, free, and with nothing left to prove. When the lyrics hit, if I could just come in, I swear I'll leave. I won't take nothing but a memory. I smiled. Maybe that's exactly what I was doing, passing through old memories, carrying only what they taught me. How to stand again. The road back to Ann Arbor was lined with golden leaves, trees casting light ribbons across the windshield. I lowered the volume, wind pouring through the window, the smell of fresh coffee swirling. A squirrel darted across the turn. My foot touched the brake, and I laughed to myself. In that moment, as I drove alone, unhurried, unburdened, with just country music and warm light, I realized I no longer felt alone in the driver's seat. Time moved strangely fast. By December, Ann Arbor was blanketed in snow. Christmas lights strung across porches transformed the neighborhood into a ribbon of wonder. It was the first Christmas after the divorce, and also the first one I truly felt at peace. That afternoon, I set the table, placing wine glasses and cinnamon cookies Lisa had baked with Eleanor. The little house smelled of butter, cinnamon, and almond. Vera Murphy arrived first, wearing a deep blue sweater, holding a bottle of Italian red wine. Takes something special to drag me out of the office on a holiday, she joked, but I think your house qualifies. A little later, Emily Sanders, the young woman who once sent the evidence email about Raymond, walked in with a small brown paper gift tied with red ribbon. For Lisa, she said she liked Legos. I looked at her, seeing in her eyes the quiet bravery of someone who once dared to speak the truth. The three of us gathered around the table while Lisa ran in circles chasing Peanut, the tiny rescue dog, a fuzzy slipper dangling from his mouth. We turned on Home Alone, Christmas music mixed with Lisa's giggles as Kevin slid on banana peels. I looked around the living room, soft golden lights washed over every face here. Each woman carried her own wounds, but tonight, no one spoke of pain. We talked about ordinary things. Jobs, food, small plans for the new year. Peanut circled the tree, dragging a red ribbon. Lisa collapsed in laughter, Vera chuckled, and Emily filmed on her phone. I held my wine glass, speaking slowly. This is home. No one responded, but Vera lifted her glass gently, her eyes glowing in the light. Outside, the snow fell slow as breath, coating the porch and windows. Inside me rose a new feeling, Not loud joy, but the deep warmth of a survivor who found her own light. Lisa leaned on my shoulder. "Mom," she whispered, "I think Santa will definitely find our house." I laughed, kissed her forehead. "Yes, because this year I turned the lights on bright." The house burst into laughter. And in that snowy night, I knew Christmas wasn't just a holiday, it was a marker of a new life. Warmer, truer, freer. 1 year later. Spring arrived in Ann Arbor, skies clear, apple trees blooming white along Huron River Drive. My life was quiet, but meaningful. Second act financial recovery. The divorce finance service I started had helped over 15 women uncover hidden or obscured assets during their divorce. Some had sobbed in our first meeting, only to smile months later when they reclaimed their retirement funds. Each morning, I dropped Lisa at school, stopped by my favorite cafe, then returned to the small office by the porch. On the wall, I hung a wooden sign engraved with, "Freedom doesn't come from revenge. It comes from rebuilding." One April day, my phone rang. A producer's voice from the Morning Brew Detroit podcast said, "Kimberly Roberts? We'd love to have you on the show to talk about financial recovery after divorce. Your story's been shared all over Michigan women's forums." I sat in a lit studio, microphone before me, the male host's voice warm and low. "Kimberly, if you could say one thing to a woman listening right now, someone lost between pain and fear, what would it be?" I looked up, smiled, my voice no longer trembling. "That truth doesn't break you, it teaches you to swim." The host paused, then laughed. Studio lights cast a glow over my face, a face once shattered, now clearer than ever. 2 weeks later, the episode had over 1.2 million listens. My inbox overflowed. "You inspired me to check my husband's accounts." "I got divorced last week, and I'm okay." "I found myself after hearing your voice." I read each line, hands trembling slightly. Every message was a life starting over. Like me, 1 year ago. Vera texted simply, "Proud of you, Kimberly." Justice echoes louder when it heals. That afternoon, Lisa, Peanut, and I drove toward Belle Isle Park. The Detroit lake wind tossed my hair. Sunlight sparkled on the water. I turned on the radio. "I Hope You Dance" by Lee Ann Womack played. Gentle yet strong. Lisa sang the opening lines. Peanut stuck his head out the window, floppy ears catching the wind. I smiled, hands on the wheel, heart at peace. My voice, not a monologue, but a whisper, joined the music. He drowned in lies. And I learned how to swim, to breathe, and to believe. The BMW E7 crossed the Belle Isle Bridge, the Detroit River glowing in red sunset. The wind carried the scent of water, of freedom, of a new chapter just begun. Share this story if you believe women deserve freedom and peace. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to hear more journeys of courage and rebirth.